I think there's something a little weird going on right now with Nintendo fans and how they view the Switch, and it's something I didn't really expect to happen. I think that right now, in general, Nintendo fans are sort of stuck in this middle ground between thinking the Switch is the coolest Nintendo system going and thinking it's a little disappointing in some ways. Obviously, this doesn't apply to everybody, but I think for a lot of people, their perspective on the Switch has gone from something overwhelmingly positive to something that's still very positive in some ways, but also not very positive in others. What exactly is this situation? What's causing this to happen? And what does it mean for the future of the Switch? Hello all 2,350 of you, I'm Redkwan, and this is the weird situation right now for Nintendo fans. So first of all, what exactly do I think is going on? Well, based on what I've seen, it seems like people have, within the past year or so, become a lot less positive about the Switch. There's obviously still a lot of positivity around it, but for whatever reason it seems to be fading a little bit now. Earlier in the Switch's life, you would hear about the Switch as being a great system, with a few things to improve in the future. It was a very positive outlook, but now I think you hear people refer to it as a great system with a few big flaws, which is a lot more of a mixed view. I've seen this transition take place based on what I've seen people talk about, and to be fair, maybe part of that is because the people who watch my videos tend to be more in the pro Wii U camp based on some of the videos I've made, but I've seen this from other places too, so I don't think that's all it is. People in general have seemed to go from an all-positive outlook to one that's a weird in-between, that's somehow both very positive and a little disappointed. So what happened? Assuming this actually is something that's going on and I'm not completely stupid, which is a bit of a jump, I'll admit. I have a few different ideas. For one, I think a big reason is that the Switch has slowed down a little bit. The first year gave us game after game, and we almost got a big release every month. We also got what were arguably the two best games on the system in that first year, in Zelda Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey. The Switch was cranking out big games quickly, and people were still amazed by the portable home console combination and what it could do. There were some problems, sure, but Nintendo was on such a roll that it seemed like they would all be fixed fairly quickly. That first year built up a huge fan base and a ton of positivity around the Switch, and even though 2018 was a lot slower, we still got Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, which was very big and which people really liked, and to most people, 2018 felt like more of a down year, and that soon we'd be back to what 2017 gave us. And since then, we really haven't. 2019 was a pretty good year, but it still wasn't 2017, and 2020 looks to be another 2018 situation. I think people are beginning to realize that the blowout year in 2017 was the exception, and the typical Switch year isn't going to be nearly as full. The Switch is still getting a decent amount of games, but I think that's where some of the positivity might have gone. But I don't think that's the whole problem. Yes, the games have slowed down, and I do think people are beginning to come to terms with that, especially that first halves of years are going to have pretty much nothing, besides stuff that gets delayed like Animal Crossing. But I think the other flaws with the system might be an even bigger problem. Initially, the Switch had a lot of problems, but at the beginning, it seemed like they would all be fixed. The Switch was fairly basic when it first launched, but then again, most consoles are. It would get more features and become more streamlined over time. But in a lot of ways, it hasn't. The online service still doesn't seem great, and there have been some major hardware issues, although some of them have been fixed. Plus, the Switch still hasn't gotten a lot of the helpful features that past Nintendo systems had, like internet browsers, streaming applications, and a virtual console. Most of this stuff seemed like it would improve, and most of it hasn't, and I think this stuff is becoming more and more annoying for people. At first, people saw them as problems that would get smoothed out over time, but now they seem like permanent flaws of the system, and I think that's part of what's made people like the system less recently. But maybe it's not really about any of those things. There are definitely reasons why some people might feel less positively about the Switch now than they used to, and those things are probably a part of the problem, but maybe this is just how things tend to go. I think in general, people usually feel positively about something like this when it first comes out, and the more they get used to it, the more they take it for granted and see its flaws. Then when it's done, they'll usually look back on it more positively again, and I could definitely see it being the case with the Switch. This sort of thing seems to happen a lot with games too, where people love it at first, then look back on it in a couple years and wonder if it was really that good, then look back on it in 5 to 10 years and say to their friends, hey, you know what game was actually really good? And then they make a 45-minute retrospective video on it. I know how these things work, but I think that could definitely be what's happening with the Switch. Obviously, there are some reasons why people might be annoyed with it right now when compared to when it first came out, but the reason the positive outlook has dropped could also be because it's just not as new and exciting as it used to be. In any case, I do think people, not everyone, but in general, are beginning to view the Switch less positively than they used to. Maybe it's because the game releases have slowed down, or because of nagging unresolved issues and annoyances, or maybe it's just because that's what happens when things get older and less exciting. I think this effect is probably some combination of all of these, but what exactly does it mean? Well, I'm not sure it means much, to be honest. People might be a little less pleased than they were a year or two ago, but the general public who doesn't own a Switch still sees it as an exciting new product, and the people who do own Switches are still going to be buying games for them. I'm not sure anything really changes. Maybe if this gets much worse, Nintendo will feel obligated to change some of the issues that still hurt the Switch, but if they haven't by now, I kinda doubt it. I just find it sort of interesting how the opinions toward the console have changed over the years. They're still far from negative, but it is interesting to see how the negativity has crept in over time. And I think it's overall a weird sort of in-between for Nintendo fans, and it'll be interesting to see how opinions toward it change going forward. Well, I'm Redkwan. Do you feel a lot of Nintendo fans are sort of caught in the middle right now? Are you caught in the middle right now? Is this all completely stupid and I don't know what I'm talking about? Because if so, then we've all just wasted about 6 to 7 minutes. Anyways, I'm Redkwan, thank you all for watching, and I'll hopefully see you all later. Goodbye.
Hey, look, we're going over there. Making new videos so you better behave. Oh, hey, that's right, you see. Quan through and through in a Zamboni.